Hey, this is Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and I am excited to be here as always on Wednesday at 10 a.m. St. Louis time to talk about really anything you want to talk about. I have some topics, I have some Stonemaier Games news, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have as long as they're not spoiler questions. Of course, I don't answer spoiler questions about our upcoming products. That said, the Tapestry expansion is fully spoiled at this point. I've been talking about this over the last few weeks, and so last Wednesday I was pretty close to finishing up all the design diary posts, but then I finished them on Thursday. Thursday was the Automa solo mode, thanks to David doing a guest post there, and then Friday was the rulebook reveal, and then there were some reviewers presented content for it on Saturday, and then their opinion content, so actual reviews of the expansion, released on the 16th, just yesterday. So if you're interested in hearing what unbiased advanced reviewers think about Tapestry arts and architecture, feel free to check out those reviews on our website. As usual, I don't watch reviews of our games, so I don't know if they liked the expansion or not. I'm hoping they did, but I don't really know because I like to kind of separate myself from the potential for bias when selecting reviewers. I want the selection process to be separate from what they actually think about their games so that you get the most unbiased reviews of our games. Hi, Tony. Thanks for joining us today. Hi, Perry. Thanks for joining us as well. Perry says, today is a day that I dedicate to working on my board game all day, and watching your videos always hypes me up to create, so I'm happy to join you live. That's awesome, Perry. Awesome that you are able to dedicate a full day to doing that. And I can definitely relate to what you're saying there. Sometimes when I'm getting excited about designing a game or a certain type of game, I'll go watch a review or a video about someone else who is excited about that game or that mechanism or that theme. And that gets me kind of in the mood, in the excitement to do that. I've done that a lot for my open world exploration game because I've had to take breaks from that to work on other things. And whenever I come back to it, I'm like, okay, I want to watch this video that I saw a while ago. Or rewatch it. I've watched some of the same videos like multiple times just because they get me so excited about getting back into that design. George is here. Chad is here. Taylor, Sean, thank you all for joining me today. I guess I'll jump into some random topics here. Some our games news, some things that I've been up to. Role player adventures. That's been kind of the game of the hour for me recently. I started playing, I learned it on Sunday. Megan and I played the first scenario, I believe, on Sunday, and then we played the second scenario on Monday. And I put my video out about it on Tuesday. And it is just, I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving role player adventures. It does everything that I want out of an adventure game. It has really cool innovative mechanisms that are very easy to implement. Like there's a modifier mechanism that modifies monsters in a really interesting way. I love that the game doesn't, there is combat in the game if you want there to be, but unlike many other adventure games, many other adventure games and kind of dungeon crawl style games, you are given more choices than just fight the monster. Like there's something, there might be a monster that shows up and you can say, okay, you can fight this monster, or you can hide, you can run away, you can try to speak the monster's language, you can do all these other things. And I love that. I absolutely love that, like, the default thing isn't, there's something that looks evil, let's attack it. I think that is problematic in a number of ways, not just in terms of gameplay and game mechanisms, but also in terms of ethics and morals in board games. So I love that the game offers those options, and I'm absolutely loving it. I can't wait to get to the next scenario. That's Role Player Adventures that I'm talking about, which is not an expansion for Role Player. It is a standalone role player game, a standalone game in kind of the role player universe, probably the best way to put it. What else has been going on? I played Aquatica for the first time last week too, and I played Unsettled as well. I really enjoyed Aquatica. That's a game that's been out for a little while. My friend Miles taught it to me at game night on Thursday, and it was a really neat Concordia style game where you have a hand management, you have this hand of cards, you play a card, and eventually you refresh those cards. But it just has some really nice streamlined mechanisms with a lot of good feelings that happen, a lot of nice progression, like mini progression and long-term progression in the game. Really, really cool game, Aquatica. And played Unsettled at my game night last week as well. Yeah. Tony says that his group played game 9 of Charterstone last night. He says, no spoilers, but we're still encountering new things and unlocking new game processes. Everyone is on the edge of their seat at the end of each game. I'm so fond of this revealing or unfolding of the game as you play each time. Is there another game you can recommend that uses a similar mechanism? I think Charterstone does it in two ways. One is that like at the end of every game, you get a new reveal that hopefully makes you excited to play the next game. And also there are reveals that happen during the game as you open these crates. Like you build a building, then you open a crate associated with that building, and you get something new. So I think it's the pairing of those two things that hopefully works well with Charterstone. That's what I was aiming for. There are games that do one or the other. There aren't too many legacy style games that do both of those things. Clank Legacy, as I recall, I think does a little bit of both. They do a little bit more during the game than at the end of the game. And Rise of Queensdale, if you enjoy like the feeling of Charterstone, Rise of Queensdale has a very similar feeling with a lot of different things revealed throughout the game, and I think the sum at the end of each game as well. Yeah. Hi, Mark, Chris, thanks for joining us. Chris says, how are my cats, my dad? Am I visiting anywhere for Thanksgiving? Our Thanksgiving plans are a little bit up in the air right now. And the cats are doing well. No one's in here right now. I think they're off in the bedroom. They're enjoying the bed lately. And my dad is doing well. I talked to him on Sunday. He finished round 6 of chemo, and now is just in like the 3 weeks that follow round 6, any round of chemo. But he seemed to be doing pretty well. George says, will I play more live Rolling Realms this week? George, I will. Yes, I plan to probably do one today, and then Thursday, and then Friday. I don't know the exact times yet. Probably later in the afternoon today if I am able to get to it. But I'm hoping to kind of end it on Friday because I want to reveal the Terra Mystica expansion pack on Friday. Or not expansion pack, promo pack. Because two things. One, the retail release date for Rolling Realms is this Friday, the worldwide English retail release date. And two, I'm planning on opening orders for the promo pack on Friday. There definitely should not be any mad rush to get them. We made plenty of them, and I'm expecting many people to maybe wait until the Tapestry expansion pre-order on December 1st to get the promo pack. That's totally fine. There will be plenty of them. You don't need to rush to get it. But for those who want it and maybe have something else they want to get on our web store on Friday, I think that's a great... that it will be. I plan on having it available on Friday, so I look forward to revealing it. I'm not going to play with it because no one has it to play along with me yet on Friday, but I think that's when I'll reveal it. What else have I been playing? I think I talked about all the games that I've been playing. Oh, some big news. Tapestry is now available on Board Game Arena in beta version. So if you want to play and somewhat test out, whenever you play a beta version on Board Game Arena, you are also committing to testing it a little bit. I've heard things are still a little fiddly with the landmarks, but it is available on Board Game Arena now. I'd love it if you give it a try and gave Board Game Arena some feedback so they can get it ready for the official launch. But I'm just excited to have it there. I love Board Game Arena, and I'm excited to have another one of our games on there. That's Viticulture is on there so far, and Tapestry. I think those might be the only two, unless I'm forgetting one. Yeah, I think only those two. Viticulture is fully available now, not just in beta version. And I don't know if I missed the news last week, but Wingspan is now available on Android. So if you want to get Wingspan and you're an Android user, you can get that on Android now. Perry says last night he played his first game of Scythe, and he says, I love that it's easy to learn, especially with how well everything you can do is labeled, but it can be very strategic deciding what to do next. Lots of thinking ahead. He said, I managed to win with Rusviet Engineering versus Crimean Mechanical. Well done on the win, Perry. And yeah, you touched upon some of the things I was trying to do with the game. I was trying to give all the things that you need to remember that you can do. I wanted to put them into the interface of the player mat, not like a separate reference guide or checklist of actions. I wanted them on the player mat to instruct you, okay, this is what you can do on your turn. This is another thing that you can do on your turn if you have the resources to do it. And we included some like quick start guides and things like that in the game to help players get into the game early, start taking turns rather than sitting through a bunch of rules. So I'm glad you had a good first experience with it. That's always good to hear. Chris says, what's my favorite thing to eat around Thanksgiving? I like gravy on top of mashed potatoes and or stuffing. I think gravy probably has some things that a vegetarian like myself should not eat, but I'm okay with that. I kind of make my own rules with that, and I mostly eat vegetarian. But there are things like marshmallows. Like I'm going to eat Rice Krispie treats, and marshmallows are not vegetarian. Although I have heard there are some pretty good vegetarian marshmallows that I need to try. But there are little things like that where it's kind of a little bit removed from the original meat substance. I'm willing to try that. And on special occasions, I do eat a little bit of fish here and there. Anyway, gravy. And for those of you who celebrate Thanksgiving, I know this is an international audience here, but those of you in the U.S. who are celebrating Thanksgiving next week, let me know what your favorite food is as well. I like that question, Chris. Omid says, have I ever thought about designing a board game for PC? Why or why not? The main reason why not is that I'm not a programmer, so I would have to rely on someone else to translate my idea into the game itself. And really, game design is all about the execution. It's not about just having an idea. It's about actually implementing it, about actually making the prototype. So that isn't something I'm pursuing. But there are many of our games that where I've designed the game or worked on the game, helped develop the game, published the game, and then a digital developer has turned it into a board game port, a digital board game port, like I just mentioned with Tapestry and Wingspan. So there are lots of examples of that, of our games being available in digital form. Perry says he's glad my dad is doing well. Thank you, Perry. And he says his mother just finished chemo and had her surgery to remove lymph nodes, so she's doing well. I'm really happy to hear that. I know the surgery aspect of it can lead to whole other complications, so I hope she's recovering well from that surgery. Simon says, how different would Scythe be if you designed it now? That's an interesting question, Simon. Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to fully answer that. I can say if I had to completely redesign Scythe, I don't know if I would change all that much. I think a lot of aspects of Scythe work really well. There's certainly, with any asymmetry, I would dig deeper into the data to find edge cases and not have like band combinations and things like that. And there's one thing that's always bothered me a little bit or bugged me a little bit with the, I think it always confuses new players in terms of how you get workers and how you pay for production as related to the workers on your player mat. And so I might have shifted the worker system as, honestly, I think it's pretty clever once you understand it, but when you don't understand it, it's easy to make mistakes. But I might shift that to the recruit action. So I might have instead made the recruit action, like when you take the recruit action, that's how you get more workers. Especially given how powerful workers are in the game, how important they are, that maybe you should have to pay for them a little bit more than just the cost that I put on the player mat. That's something I might think about. I might have thought about doing, but I have no plans to redesign Scythe or do a new edition of it or anything like that, because I'm really happy with how it turned out. Paul says, at what point in your design process do you set aside some items for promo status? Like Paul said, these two tiles will be released as promos and not included in the main set. Are they printed at the same time as the main run? Well, Paul, I can answer in general. For me, I hardly think about that at all. I don't really. We're not a promo-driven company. I've kind of moved away from that after Scythe, after seeing like kind of the complications and frustrations that can arise from players when you have a bunch of promos that they're trying to gather, trying to get. We're trying to sell them on our web store or work with other partners like MeepleSource to sell them. It's really complicated. I try to stay away from promos in general. If you want to follow promos, or if you're thinking about that, if you're looking at other companies that have promo-driven strategies, I think there's the approach of printing it with the core game or thinking about it from a design perspective during the core game. Although I think many designers put all the good stuff into the game. They're not really setting stuff aside for later unless it really doesn't fit onto a punchboard sheet. Maybe if something doesn't fit, they might set it aside. But otherwise, I don't think they're setting aside a lot of that kind of stuff. Instead, these are ideas that they're having later, that they're hearing about from other people that they're having later. And so if they hear about them later, you can't really print that along with the core game, especially if it's a tile. And so it's just, you're just doing one-off print runs later for a very specific small punch board or a small set of cards, things like that. It's easy to do that. It's not necessarily, it's maybe a little more cost effective, especially if you're talking about cards, to include them with the printing of the core game. But I don't know. I don't know if a promo strategy like that, thinking about it at the time of the design of the game, I don't know if that's completely worth it, because it means that you're intentionally holding something back that could easily be included in the game itself, which I generally don't think is a good way to serve players, rather than waiting until later and having an idea later and be like, oh, that's a cool idea. Or I hear that players really like this fan promo that someone came up with, and trying to implement that later on. That's just my personal take. Tony says, what's one or two non-Stonemaier games that should be on everyone's Christmas list? Funny you should ask that, Tony. I did a little interview chat with Joe at Stacking Benjamins, the Stacking Benjamin podcast, just yesterday. And one of Joe's questions was, what are your top 5 games for people to consider for Christmas? And I was talking to his audience, which aren't necessarily gamers, so I was thinking about that a little bit. But the games that I mentioned, I put one Stonemaier game on the list. I put Red Rising on that list. And then I also mentioned for people who really want a two-player game, I put Seven Wonders Duel. For people who want kind of a bigger box game with a whimsical side, but still plenty of interesting strategy, I put The Isle of Cats. I also could have put Role Player Adventures on there, but I had already sent Joe the list before I played Role Player Adventures. But yeah, if you want a big box epic adventure for someone for Christmas, Role Player Adventures is that game. I also mentioned Just One for those people who are just getting into gaming, want to experience a clever take on a party game slash cooperative game. And what was the last game I mentioned? It was another cooperative game, Mysterium Park. I love Mysterium Park. It's a great version of Mysterium, much easier to set up, very easy to get into and play, fully cooperative, scales down to 2 players or up to 6 players really well. So you've asked for 2. Those are 5 that I'll mention for Christmas list this year, or holiday list, holiday shopping. Chris mentioned, he was talking about Thanksgiving food. He mentioned open-faced turkey sandwiches with mashed potatoes and gravy and vanilla spice eggnog. I do love eggnog. That to me is more of a Christmas treat, but if someone wants to serve that to me on Thanksgiving, I would gladly drink it. Danielle says that her 11-year-old son woke up yesterday with a game idea. So proud and excited to see him work on this project. That's awesome. That's awesome that he had the idea. It's awesome to hear. It sounds like he's already actively working on it, which is a big step to actually, start to build that prototype, get it to the table for the first time, see how it actually plays. That is really exciting. I hope it goes well for your 11-year-old. Rick says, how do you get your game to have the CE logo and get authorized to sell your game in Europe? You just put the logo on there. You make sure that the game meets those requirements, and then you can put the logo on the box, basically. And every now and then a game might get pulled for testing. We have found, and I think the general advice in the industry is that it is better to respond to that, to have a game get pulled and have it be tested, which doesn't take all that long, versus having to get fully tested up front. I just make sure the game is compliant with those guidelines up front, and instead of going through the testing process up front, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. That is, I think, the way that we currently do things. Let me look to make sure if that has changed over the years. That's how we currently do it. Actually, no, that changed. Yeah, that's old Jamey advice. New Jamey advice is just get the certification and then put CE on there. I think a lot of companies don't actually do that. As I said, I think there was a time where we didn't do it, but I'm looking back and it looks like for quite some time that has been what we've done. We've got that. We've just gotten the certification up front. So your manufacturer can handle that for you. They can throw it through that certification. But you can also just make sure it meets those guidelines and put CE on the box. And you can also avoid it. I forget the exact age that it needs now. It's either 13 plus or 14 plus. You can put one of those ages on the box and it makes that CE less important. Also, I'm sorry to answer this off the top of my head. I do have blog posts about this. You might want to look at them before getting the final answer. But that's my off-the-cuff answer, which is not particularly helpful. Keith is here about Role Player Adventures. Yeah, Keith, I was raving about it earlier on this live cast, and I don't want to spoil anything, but I am so excited to play the next scenario. Megan knows that I've been talking about it nonstop, and we won't get to it till tomorrow, but I'm excited to get to it tomorrow. George says, have I done any rock climbing lately or disc golf? Anything sports or movement related? Well, I do my stairs every day. I run up and down my stairs every day, but that isn't fun to talk about. I haven't done rock climbing in almost a year now because I've gotten so much more into disc golf, but I do need to return to it. We did play disc golf this past weekend. I had an up and down day, a couple double bogeys followed by like a really great shot where I got a birdie. But I had a fun day playing out there at a local park here in St. Louis. And we're going to go out this weekend too. We usually play in the morning where we can avoid some of the crowds. We're going to do that this weekend as well. So yeah, I play disc golf pretty much every weekend now. Michael says that Just One is one of his favorite games. I love Just One. Yeah, it is a fantastic game. Juso says, Legacy Games created a whole new category of board games. Do you desire to create something groundbreaking like that too? Yeah, I mean, certainly in the back of my head, I'd love to create a whole new genre of games, but I'd rather I want to mostly just focus on making things that are at least a little bit innovative and a lot of fun that bring joy to people. So I don't want to get caught up in trying to make something groundbreaking. And in the meantime, I push aside a bunch of ideas that are still innovative and unique and still fun. I am working, like even like the game that I'm working on, I'm working on a game that has something completely innovative and something that's very tough to repeat because it's so budget heavy. But but even within that, there are lots of mechanisms in the game that have been done in other games. So it's just this one aspect of it that is very new and will be very difficult, I think, for people to replicate. I know I'm being vague there. I can't wait to talk about it, but it's I can't talk about it yet. You'll see someday what I'm talking about. Don says, of all the digital implementations of games under your umbrella, which is your favorite? And as a follow-up, will Scythe ever land on BGA? I'm hoping it will. I'm kind of in talks with the Knights of Unity, the folks that hold the bigger digital contact for Scythe, about that possibility. So we'll see what they say. I don't play a lot of digital versions of our games, to be honest. So it's hard for me to judge that. I will say the two that, from what little I've played them, have stood out to me the most are Charterstone and Wingspan. I think both of those developers did a fantastic job. That isn't to knock on the other developments. Like Digidice, I think, did a fine job with viticulture. There's other implementations as well of our games. But yeah, I think I'm just really impressed with what the team at Monster Couch did to bring Wingspan to life, and Akram did to bring Charterstone to life on digital format. The full AI versions are what I'm talking about. BGA is also incredible as well, but it's a step up when you have that full AI version. David says he's excited that Tapestry is now in beta on BGA. I am too. We're talking about digital games here. Do you provide any sort of stipend to or payment to the developers who worked on it? He says, I participated in the alpha and I know it was a lot of work. That is BGA's responsibility. So BGA covers those costs to the person or people who work on it. And yeah, so that isn't something they ask the publishers to do. It's something that they do within Board Game Arena. What else was there? Oh, so I had something else that I was going to talk about, but I just forgot. Some blog posts that I've done recently, maybe this will jog my memory. I did a blog post about repetition, like the power of repetition in marketing. I've noticed that sometimes I'll hear about a game and I'm a little intrigued, and then I read an article about it, and then I hear a podcast with a designer talking about it, and then I watch a video review about it. Like every day or every week, something new is coming out about that game, and eventually, thanks to that repetition, I might reach a tipping point where I'm like, okay, I just need to get this game. That has happened to me many, many times. And so I talked about how that's powerful. It's I think, good to have an ongoing outlay of information about a game rather than having everything come out on just one day or nothing at all. I talked about that in a blog post. I also talked about an article that Netflix posted a while back about how they've tested different images and which images are more compelling for people to actually click on and look at their content. Really interesting article, and I kind of echoed some of those thoughts in the article about how very expressive people in images can make a big difference, or people or characters, if you're talking about a tabletop game box, for example, and how having too many people in the image or the box is a problem, but having like more than one is also good. It's like 2 to 3 seems to be the sweet spot. And I noticed that in Shem Phillips games, the West Kingdom games, the North Raiders of the North Sea, things like that. My favorite being Architects of the West Kingdom. There are 3 people on the box. I think there are 3 people on most of those boxes. So he kind of figured that out, I think, even before Netflix figured it out, that 2 or 3 people is the sweet spot on the box, and have them be very expressive people. And even like a little villainous, not necessarily fully villainous, but at least a little villainous. Something about that, I think, Netflix found gets people to engage a little bit more. And then my video this past weekend, it was a fun one, where I looked at an article I wrote in 2013 about the top 10 things I learned about game design in 2013. And I went back and looked at that article and looked at each point. And in the video, I talked about whether or not I still agree with myself from 2013. Talking about what I agree with, what maybe I would revise or change some of those statements a little bit. So if you want to see how maybe I've evolved in terms of thinking about game design. Actually, this goes back to the question about Scythe, how I may have changed as a game designer over the years. You can check out that video from this past Sunday. Aurelian says, they said, I've just played my 50th game of Red Rising. That's awesome, 50th game. And they say, I must say, still now, the more I play, the more I enjoy making my decisions, knowing exactly what specific cards could appear. It reminds me how I love Magic Cube Draft for that type of feeling. It could easily become my favorite board game. Congrats for your job on it. I may add that Dr. Virani is probably my favorite card for the crazy things she can do. If ever an expansion comes up one day, I would encourage you to push harder on that type of design. Love it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's good to know that you love that Dr. Virani mechanism. Maybe we'll have to implement a little bit more of that or if and when we revisit the game, either as a spin-off or a sequel or as an expansion someday. And thank you so much for playing it so much. That feels really good for me to hear. We put a lot into that game, and as well as it's done, it feels like it's still flying a little bit under the radar. And so I'm excited to hear that you're still playing it. Freddie says, will Stonemaier be having a Black Friday sale? I don't think so. No, we don't have anything planned. I very rarely do sales at the same time that a bunch of other people are doing sales. And plus, we always have a 25% sale on our web store if you become a Stonemaier champion. So every single day, you can get 25% off everything on our web store if you are a Stonemaier champion. Yeah. Freddie says, also, thank you for making quality content that's allowed me to get my wife into board games. Tapestry is her absolute favorite thing to play, and that makes me happy. So thank you, sir. I'm honored to hear that. Thank you for saying that. Makes me really happy when I find that someone is able to get closer to someone they care about, your wife in this case, thanks to board games in general, whether it's like a board game that I've recommended or one that I've designed or published. So thank you for sharing that, Freddie. David says, in digital implementations of board games like Wingspan, you can try to complete various achievements for badges. This concept is in nearly every video game. Do you think it could work in a physical board game? I think it could, and I know it does because we have it in two of our games. We have an achievement sheet in Scythe, and we have an achievement sheet in My Little Scythe, which might beg the question, why haven't we done it in other games? And sometimes I've intended to do it, and then I just forget. And sometimes I think it isn't necessarily the right thing for the game because it does drive you to make decisions that are sometimes a little bit different than what the game really wants you to do or what you really want to do in the game. And so I kind of have to be careful about when I can do that. And there's a slight budget element. It isn't a lot to add an achievement sheet to a game, but you know, most of our games are generally over budget. So adding like one more thing is something I try to avoid in general. But yeah, I know it works. It has worked. People have spoken highly about the achievement sheets inside and My Little Scythe. They've said they've had a lot of fun with them. So I need to remember that and do that in some other games in the future. Ashley said, what sort of topics are we talking about? Well, Ashley, you've shown up on a board game company's page. Maybe, I don't know if you know my company, Stonemaier Games. I'm Jamey. I run Stonemaier Games. I'm a designer. And I'm talking about all sorts of topics, usually related to games. Although I always mention my chocolate of the day. And I haven't done that yet today. So I'm going to mention, I just got some Ferris dark chocolate almonds. So I think that will be my chocolate of the day. Also, after Halloween, I got some popcorn flavored M&Ms. Not the best M&M flavor, but I'm still eating them. So they are a thing that I'm eating. So let me know what anyone who's watching today, what are you indulging in today? What is your treat of the day? We had other things going on at Stonemaier Games. I had a great... So I should give some context here. People submit games to Stonemaier Games to publish, and we only publish 1 or 2 new games a year. So most games don't get through the early stages of the submission process, but sometimes they do get through, and we ask for a prototype, and I play test it. And that happened earlier this week for a really, really good game. And so we might have a new game in the Stonemaier lineup. It's one of the best rule books that I've ever read in a game prototype. It's one of the best games that I played in prototype form. I'm really, really excited about it. So that's something that happened earlier this week. Ashley said, can I talk about sports? Sure. Yeah. We're jumping around to various topics. So if you have something that you'd like to share about sports or something that you'd like to ask, I'm happy to talk about sports. Dave says that his treat today is dark chocolate and sea salt popcorn. Yeah. Oh, that sounds good. That sounds really tasty, Dave. What else is going on at Stonemaier Games? I mentioned that Tapestry reviews are now live. Oh, I don't want to forget sumo wrestling. Some of you may have heard me talk about my love over the last year of sumo wrestling, and it's back. The new tournament's every other month in Japan, and the new tournament is now live, and it's a really exciting tournament so far. So if you're interested in learning a little bit about sumo, they come out in 30-minute highlight videos once a day. I watch them in the morning. I think they come out maybe around midnight my time. but search Google for Grand Sumo Awesome. And yeah, I think you have to scroll maybe just a tiny bit to see the videos that are around 25 to 30 minutes. And those are the videos about sumo wrestling. I'm happy to answer any questions about them if you end up giving them a try, but it's a surprising sport, a surprisingly entertaining sport in my opinion. Chad says, you didn't pick up my game, but I was so honored that you requested a prototype to play. That was a win for me. Thanks, Chad. Yeah, well, yeah, we don't pick every game, but I really appreciate you submitting to us. I mean, that's just an honor at all that anyone would want their game to be published by Stonemaier Games. And hopefully we're able to give you some good feedback. And I recall your game being very solid. It just wasn't a good fit for us. And that happens very often where we play a great game and it just happens to not be the best fit for us. Masia says, can we hear more about this exciting prototype? What are the core mechanisms? I definitely appreciate your curiosity there, but it's just a prototype now, so a lot can change about it over the design and development process, and so I can't reveal anything yet. I know I'm being super vague there. Let me see if I can say anything about it. I really don't want to spoil anything about something that could change drastically during the development process, but I don't know. I'll just share my excitement for it. I don't want to go into too many details yet, but I love my play of it, and I look forward to working with this designer. And yeah. Dave says, do I play any card games? It's a different beast than board games, obviously. Yeah, I do play card games. There's some like card only games that I play, like The Crew. I'm pointing over at my game shelf that you can't see, but I love The Crew. I play Magic. More digitally now. Well, actually, no. I played less digital Magic and more like draft Magic. I host a draft every time a new set comes out, so that's a card-driven game. I'm also I bought some packs of Flesh and Blood, which is a newer card game that I'm eager to try. It's not something that I think I'm going to get really into, but I've heard so many great things that I want to give it a try. Dave, what are some of your favorite card-driven games? There's also kind of like the mini games you can play with a single poker deck of cards. So I love hearts, I love spades, I love poker itself. Yeah. Jazz here is from the Lobby of Hobbies is joining us. Jazz posted his review. I don't know what you said in that review, Jazz, about Tapestry Arts and Architecture, but I appreciate you creating it. So anyone who's curious to hear Jazz's thoughts on Tapestry Arts and Architecture, check out his channel, The Lobby of Hobbies, over on YouTube. Justin's here. He's saying, I have to paint my kitchen ceiling, but also have to work. How do you balance work and things that need to be done around the house? Yeah, I kind of just go with the flow. I work from home. I think a lot of people might work from home now, and I definitely prioritize my work. But if something needs to be done around the house, or if I need to run an errand and it's more convenient for me to run the errand at, like yesterday, I ran out to the grocery store at right before lunchtime, around 11 o'clock, because that was a lot more convenient than me waiting until some arbitrary work hour time finished for me to go do that. So I do things as they make sense for convenience and efficiency and optimization in general. And sometimes it's just nice to take a little break from work and do something that gets your mind off of it so you can be refreshed when you come back to it. I sometimes do that. Typically, though, if it's a really long project, I don't do it during the day. I try to wait until, I don't know, it's arbitrary because I don't have to work a set business hours anymore. But yeah, I try to separate work and play a little bit. Do you have a method that you found works for you, Justin? Justin says, I think we're streaming Rolling Realms tonight. Any tips you want to share for streaming that? You could probably, you can see the videos that I've done about it. I've done a lot of videos. Thank you for streaming Rolling Realms on your Room 51 Twitch channel. I assume that's where you're streaming it. I found the really crucial thing, the most important thing for people to see are the numbers on the dice. It's nice that they can see what you're writing down. It's nice that they can see other things like that, but the numbers on the dice are the most important thing that people need to see. I've also found that, I don't know, the format that I like is that I play it one round at a time. So I'm guessing that you might be streaming a full game, but you don't necessarily have to do that. It only takes like 15, 20 minutes to explain 3 realms and play those realms and still engage with people a little bit. It doesn't take long and it doesn't take that much attention to do it. So yeah, I kind of like that format. So, I mean, you're probably going to stream for like an hour and do a full game. I totally get that. But if you want to do it in smaller chunks and just play around, or even just play around and let that be it, I think that can work really well too. Jazz says, what have I missed? He's been back in the office this week, so less free time to watch videos during the day. I've talked about a few different topics. I talked about my recent love of role-player adventures. Talked about how we played a great game that's been submitted to us. I did a great prototype playtest the other day. I mentioned Tapestry reviews are available, and that Tapestry itself is available on Board Game Arena. I talked about my blog about repetition in marketing and a Netflix article that I referenced last week in terms of thumbnail images. I talked about my video that I did this past Sunday about how my philosophies about game design lessons have changed from 2013 to now. I wrote an article about it in 2013, and I compared past Jamey to present Jamey. I talked about how I was on the Stacking Benjamins podcast just yesterday. I think the episode will go live next week. We talked about holiday gift games and talked about economic games as well with Joe over there. And I talked about how sumo wrestling is back and how I'm into that. I haven't mentioned that things that I'm watching recently. I watched Shang-Chi, the latest, or one of the recent Marvel movies. I watched that this past weekend. I really enjoyed it. And I also really enjoyed Red Notice on Netflix. It was kind of a big action adventure with a little hint of Indiana Jones to it and some con men. The heist movie it has like an amalgamation of a lot of different genres that I like all in one movie. And it's one of those movies that reviewers did not like at all, but I just had a lot of fun watching it. And we're also watching at lunch. Our lunchtime show right now is Reservation Dogs on Hulu, which is a comedy set in. Sorry, Megan's making some noise. I don't know if she's trying to get my attention or if she's just making noise. No, just making noise, just banging around. Reservation Dogs is a half-hour comedy with some dramatic elements, but mostly comedy, set on a Native American reservation, fully produced and acted, I think, by Native Americans and Indigenous people. And it's incredible. It's like so unique, it's so different, and it's just fun to watch. I highly recommend Reservation Dogs if you're looking for like a half-hour comedy, 20-minute half-hour comedy on Hulu. I have one other, I guess I'll mention the one other little fun topic. We hosted some friends over for dinner a few nights ago, and I was the chef for the night. And I made a Thai dish that I was really happy with. And I also made some cookies that I wouldn't say I burned to a crisp, but I hardened to like rock hard level. Like I made these really delicious gooey cookies and I was worried that they weren't cooked all the way through. So I put them back in the oven for another 10 minutes with the oven off, but I think the heat was still in the oven. And so the cookies just completely dried out when they were in the oven for that additional 10 to 15 minutes. And so I basically ruined a batch of cookies that I worked for like an hour. But fortunately, the rest of the dinner turned out really, really well. So I'm curious if any of you have done that recently. Have you cooked something that just did not go as planned? Let me know how that turned out for you. Perry says that he's excited to submit his prototype to Stonemeyer Games. He says it's a heist-themed game that I think would fit well with your lineup of mechanisms. I'm looking forward to sending it your way. Perry, I would love to publish a heist-themed game someday, and maybe it'll be your heist game. I'm actually going to do a video very soon about themes that I love and my favorite game in each of those themes. And Heist is a theme that I absolutely love that will be on that list. I think currently my favorite heist-themed game, unless I'm forgetting one that isn't so obviously a heist game, would be Burgle Brothers. But I know there's room to make an even better heist game than Burgle Brothers for sure. It's a very solid game. But that feeling that I get when I watch a great heist movie is what I want in a game, and I haven't experienced that yet. So yeah, curious to see what you create, Perry. Francisco says, what game will we see in your top 10 games from 2021? Well, currently, it's been maybe a little bit of a rough year. There are lots of games that I've enjoyed that have come out in 2021, but I've played more games this year that would be on that list that didn't come out this year, that came out last in 2020 or 2019. But there are two that are definitely going to vie for that number one spot right now. And unless I'm forgetting an obvious game here, but right now, those two games that are really going to vie for that number one spot are Role Player Adventures and Sleeping Gods. Both, I think, are incredible games in different ways, and they're just so good. They're both so good. So the one of those will probably be one of my top games of 2021, and the other one will probably be the number 2 game. So that's where we're headed right now, but there's still a month and a half left. I'm going to try to play as many 2021 releases as possible to give this list the best that I can. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. What about you, Francisco, and anyone else who's watching this? What 2021 release has brought you the most joy? Let me know what that game is for you. Or expansion, game or expansion. I often forget about expansions, but there have been some pretty good expansions that have come out this year, including the Many Factions expansion for Fantastic Factories and the Into the Breach, whatever the new expansion is for Shards of Infinity. Dave says when he was talking about card games, he says, I was thinking about more traditional 52 card deck games. He says, our traditional family games are High, Low, Jack, Cribbage, and Oh Hell. He had to stop playing Spades. I haven't played. I've played Cribbage, I think, once, but it's been a long time. I don't think I've played High, Low, Jack, or Oh Hell. Yeah, I haven't played those games. Freddie says, any potential Red Rising expansions? He says, because of the game, he got into the series, the book series. I love hearing that, Freddie. He says he finished Morningstar last week, and whoa, so good. Haven't gotten into Iron Gold yet. Migrates over to Mistborn for a little break. Mistborn is one of my favorite trilogy series as well, so that's a great one to migrate over to for a little while. We don't know yet. My plan with Alex, my co-designer of Red Rising, is to wait until we read the sixth book and then kind of look at the second trilogy as a whole and decide what we want to do. Whether we want to make an expansion or a spin-off or a sequel, I don't know yet. I think I'm leaning a little bit towards a sequel rather than an expansion, but maybe even a sequel that uses components from the original game if you want. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm starting to brainstorm right now, but I don't really know yet. It really depends on what happens in that sixth book. Chad says hard cookies are good for dunking in milk, and we've been doing a lot of dunking with these hard cookies that I made in milk for sure. Jazz says he's been watching the new Dexter New Blood. We saw that pop up actually recently. We were curious about that. Jazz says I was a huge fan of the original series and so far enjoying the first two episodes of this one. That's great to hear. That's exciting. Yeah, I'm really excited to hear that. We'll have to check that out. We are also watching, I'm thinking of shows that air like week to week. We're watching Survivor week to week. We're watching The Lost Symbol week to week. And we're watching The Great British Bake Off week to week as well and enjoying all of them. And we actually, I think we're watching Foundation week to week. And I think we might be an episode or two behind on that. So we need to catch up on Foundation. And actually, I think and I'll make a note about that. I think the Wheel of Time series is launching very, very soon. And I am really excited about that. Are any of you excited about the Wheel of Time TV series on Amazon? Chad says, would you consider Dune Imperium to be a 2020 game? I would, yeah. Even though I think maybe most people got their hands on it in 2021, Dune Imperium was very much a 2020 game, and I think it was my number one game of 2020, if you look back at my list from last year. It is now it is probably my favorite game, just period. I absolutely love Dune Imperium. Thank you, David. Into the Horizon, not Into the Breach. Shards of Infinity, Into the Horizon is the name of the last expansion. Gino says, I'm expecting my copy of Sleeping Gods to finally arrive tomorrow. Yeah, lots of freight shipping issues, and I just want to, obviously that's not our game, but we've seen it across the industry. Thank you all, people who follow games, who buy games, for being so patient. I've seen patience that has vastly exceeded my hopes for people, especially right now as we are still waiting for two buried containers to become unburied. So thank you for your patience, for waiting for Sleeping Gods. And for anyone who's waiting for a game right now and you're waiting patiently, that means it takes so much stress off us as publishers because it really does weigh us down that we can't do anything to get our games to you that we want to get to you as soon as possible. So thank you for that. Gino says, my current top game of the year is Hadrian's Wall, but it might be beaten by Fantastic Factories if I put in more table time for it. I do love Fantastic Factories. Not a 2021 release for me, but the expansion was a 2021 release. Chris confirms that Wheel of Time does start this week. I thought it started this week, yeah. Francisco says, the best game that I played this year is Lost Ruins of Arnak, which again was a 2020 release that I think a lot of people have gotten exposure to in 2021, closely followed by The King is Dead. Actually, I do love The King is Dead. That reminds me that The King's Dilemma is a game that I played in 2021 that definitely would be up there for the number one slot of 2021, were it not for a 2019 game. So that'll be, I often, when I do my top 10 list of the year, I often mention games that I played for the first time that year, but that I don't make eligible for the list because they were available widely before 2021. But that will be definitely a game that I mentioned this year when I talk about that list. Even Aquatica that I played recently. Aquatica is a slightly older game. That's a game that probably would be on the list if it were a 2021 release. It's just tough sometimes. Like this year, there's so many games that I think are going to finally ship to people right at the end of the year. So it might be a time to take some of these 2021 lists with a little bit of a grain of salt because they may not even really fully come out. People may not have time to play these games until 2022. So maybe I'll have to make a new list. Like I think Rado does this. Like a few months into the year, he'll make a revised list for his previous year's top 10 list. I think I've covered all the topics that I was going to cover today. So I'm just here for questions and comments and anything that you all want to discuss for the rest of the chat. Chris says, am I planning on going to Geekway Mini? I'm currently not planning on doing it, but I will. I did enjoy Geekway quite a bit a few months ago, back in October, just a month ago, I guess. And so I will think about going, but currently I haven't bought a ticket yet. Are you going, Chris? Are you going to go? Francisco says, are you planning expansions for Pendulum? He says it's his brother's current #1 game. Well, that's awesome. I'll pass that on to Travis so he can get that nice news. Currently, we're not planning any expansions for Pendulum. Aurelian says, sorry, Facebook is scrolling a little bit, so I'm having to manipulate. Aurelian says that their favorite game of the year so far, Red Rising, #1. That's awesome. Arnak, which is a 2021 release in France. That's a great point. Games released in different times in different regions. And Welcome to the Moon, which is a huge upgrade to Welcome 2. I don't think I played Welcome to the Moon. I played Welcome 2, and I played Welcome to New Las Vegas, whatever that one was. I hadn't heard of Welcome to the Moon, though. That sounds pretty cool. Is it, in terms of weight and complexity, is it more on the level of New Las Vegas, or Las Vegas, whatever that one was, or the original Welcome 2, or somewhere in between, or higher or lower than those? Chad says, if we do have an open order for some of your buried treasure, would it be possible to add the promo pack to those orders, or would that be too much trouble? It would be trouble. I can say that, but it is also possible to do. So that would be the type of thing. I'll have to see what Joe thinks about that. If he'd rather that you place the order and him combine it, or that it happens some other way. I will do this. I'm going to talk to Joe about what would be best for that, and he can maybe email everyone who's in that buried treasure group to see what's best for them. So I'll make a note about adding promo packs. I'm sure it is possible. I don't know if he wants to broadly advertise it, but I'm sure there's a way that he would prefer. Either you place the order and then he combines them, or that he looks at your order and manually adds to it and sends you a little invoice that you have to pay. I'm guessing that will be the way that he'll prefer to do it. Chad says, also, do you have an estimate of when you'll have the Rolling Realms promo pack available? Oh, like the Rolling Realms realm. I don't know yet, because I know when I want to do, like the Terra Mystica one, I'm going to do that this Friday. That's the plan. And I know when I want to do the next one, and I don't exactly have a slot yet for the Rolling Realms realm. But so I don't know yet. I don't know. Mary says that she's never played Role Player. What other game would you say Role Player Adventures is like? I would say it's actually the most like Sleeping Gods, this other game that came out this year that I really love, and that will have some comparisons to, because it has a really strong story, really well written story. It has a nice mechanical puzzle that you're trying to solve. Sleeping Gods doesn't use dice, but it's basically just an interesting puzzle that Role Player Adventures gives you with the dice that you need to solve in these skill tests and in combat. Both have a nice mix of decisions that you can make outside of combat, but also sometimes where you enter combat. Both have a nice adventure feel to them. Both don't split the party. You stick together. You're taking actions essentially together, even though you do have your own character or characters that you control. So yeah, I would say Sleeping Gods is a pretty good comparison. If you enjoy Sleeping Gods, I think you'll enjoy Role Player Adventure. If you enjoy Role Player Adventures, I think you'll enjoy Sleeping Gods. But I also actually really recommend the Role Player game. I love the core Role Player game. Chad says, I'm finishing up my Lord of the Rings trilogy novels. Do you think The Rage of Dragons would be a great series to transition to next? I would say, yeah, big time. I think even the third book of that series might be coming out in the next couple of weeks, maybe. I might be off by a year there, but The Rage of Dragons, or Rage of Dragons, is a fantastic book. I love that book. I love the second book, and I can't wait for the third book. So yeah, I highly recommend that. How did your rereading of Lord of the Rings hold up for you? Sorkin says, how does the penury and increase of cardboard prices have influenced Stonemaier Games and the board game industry in general? Yeah, I mean, I just got a quote the other day where I was like, oh, this is a little higher than I thought it was going to be because of cardboard prices. I think it just, I mean, part of it is I think we're going to see some new games that are expensive, more expensive than they would have been years ago, and I think we'll see some existing games that are offered at where the MSRPs are going to change to a higher price as publishers reprint these games, but still try to keep their margins. And I think we're also going to see more publishers move towards smaller boxes. That's something I'm trying to keep in mind. Most of our games fill the box pretty well, but but there are certain games that I would like to put in tighter boxes because you can save quite a bit on cardboard if you publish it in a smaller box, and you can fit more of those game boxes in shipping containers. And yeah, so it's just more efficient on many different levels. So I think we'll see a little bit more of that, which might lead to some customer frustration because less expansion content or sleeve cards can fit into those boxes. So we'll try to balance that out a little bit, but I think it will be a positive change to see more publishers do that. Chad says he's deciding between the Rage of Dragons and the Shards of Earth series. Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky is excellent. I actually just got a new book from him the other day, which I don't think is in the Shards series. I kind of hope that it is, but I don't think it is. But that showed up on my Kindle a couple days ago. Right now I'm reading through a book that someone here recommended, I believe. And that book, I'm going to forget the book of it. It's Recursion, I think, by Blake Crouch. I think I'm getting that right. Really, really cool book that I don't want to say anything about because I will spoil it, but it has just a really cool cinematic sci-fi feel to it. Real world sci-fi twist to it with time. I don't want to say what part of time, but time is a theme in this book that I've really been enjoying. And I believe it is a standalone book. So if you're just looking for a good standalone novel, thank you to whoever recommended it. I'm really enjoying it. Aurelian says that Welcome to the Moon is less complex than Welcome to New Las Vegas, which Aurelian didn't enjoy. And I must admit, after I played that, I just wanted to go back and play Welcome to. Aurelian says, but Welcome to the Moon contains 8 maps with different rules in each one with a campaign mode. The overall design is amazing. That's really cool. So they take kind of the core design of Welcome to, but give it a little variability and campaign inside the box. That's awesome for them to do. Now, I'm curious about that. I'm surprised I haven't heard anything about it. Why is that? Is it just me, or has it not been released to reviewers? Was it like an Essen release that hasn't gone big yet? Yeah, how do you know about it? Okay, Alex says he just checked with Joe, and Joe would prefer that people just email him to combine the promo with an outstanding order. Okay, that makes perfect sense. So if you do on Friday, when we have the Terra Mystica Realm come out, if you have another order with Stonemaier games that you've already placed, and you're kind of waiting for us to ship it, maybe it's some of these things that you've ordered, like the Wingspan neoprene playmat, we're waiting for that to arrive. Just email Joe and say that you want to add it to the order, and Joe can very easily add it to the order, and you'll get a little invoice in your email that you can then pay to make sure that we actually send it to you. Thanks, Alex, for checking with Joe on that. Carlos says, every time you announce a product, there's a lot of questions about whether it's coming in X language. I wonder, why don't you include that information on the product page? Can you work with your translation partners to have that information available when you announce a product? Carlos, that's a good question. It's something I probably need to do better at. In general, I mean, the rule is that they aren't my announcements to make. These are other independent publishers who get to make the announcements when they want to their audience. But I should do a better job at checking with those localization partners in advance. And Alex is listening to this. Alex can maybe take notes on this because he's the one that corresponds with them. So that when we do announce a new product, that for any partners that are willing to say upfront, yes, we're making this, we're open to you sharing that, Jamey, that I can just put that information on the project page. So I would do a better job of doing that, Carlos. It's still, if it isn't my information to share, I'm not going to share it. But for those partners that say, yes, Jamey, it's okay for you to share that information, I will do a better job of sharing that up front. We have a little kitty behind me waiting for food. Chad says that this was actually the first time that he's read through Lord of the Rings, not a reread. And he says it was fantastic. I love learning the deeper story that the movies couldn't possibly not make or tell. That's great. That's really great. I've read them. It's been a long time since I've read them. Zach says, when you say poker, I'm assuming you're talking about Texas Hold'em. Have you ever thought about trying to include it or something familiar in a game? I have, yeah. Because there's something delightful about getting that hand of 2 cards. There's something delightful about that. There's something delightful about the bluffing element of the game and trying to figure out how to bid correctly. And there's something delightful about seeing the cards unfold on the table one by one in Hold'em. I played Texas Hold'em for years with friends for very low stakes, for like $10, $10 buy-in, and had a great time with it. And I did a video last year about my favorite games if you also love poker. And so there are some great games out there that use poker-like mechanisms or capture the feel of poker in the tabletop format without betting any money. And so they do already exist. But it does occur to me every now and then, I wish I could capture a little bit of that feel that I get from poker when I design a tabletop game, when I play a tabletop game. Freddie says, how am I doing? Do I have any plans for the holiday? We're tossing around some plans for the Thanksgiving and upcoming winter holidays, but nothing set in stone yet. We're definitely not flying anywhere, which is the key. So we're not flying anywhere, so if we go somewhere, we're going to be driving there. Chad says, Chad recommended Recursion. Okay, awesome, Chad. So I'm talking to the right person here. He says that and Dark Matter. He likes Dark Matter even more than Recursion. So let me make sure that I get Dark Matter now that I've read Recursion, because I really, really enjoy Recursion. Chad says, I'm a fan of no wasted space in my boxes, even if it means I can't consolidate expansions. Parks is a good example of this, where every bit of space is used and the trays are very well designed. I totally agree. Yeah, Parks has a beautiful insert. I don't know if it holds sleeved cards, which might be the one complaint, but the cards are really nice, high quality in Parks, and you're not often shuffling them. Again, I know people are heavy sleevers. I respect that. But I think the games that really need sleeves are games where you're constantly shuffling the cards, deck building games, in other words. Other games don't need sleeves as much, especially in a day and age where publishers hopefully are doing pretty good customer service. And if you have a bunch of damaged cards because you've played the game 100 times, that publisher might be willing to replace those specific cards that you've damaged. Maybe not the whole deck, but specific cards, they might be able to replace them. We certainly do that at Stonemaier Games. Aurelian says that they say, I think Welcome to has only been released in France for now. You should probably hear about it in the US soon. Okay, that makes sense. That's why I haven't heard of it. Chad says, doesn't Western Legends, the game, use poker in gameplay? And he's totally right. It does. It uses, I guess it feels a little bit more like blackjack because you're not playing against an active opponent. But yes, it is poker. You're trying to create poker-like hands. And that was the thing that I did when I played Western Legends. I think I played it twice so far. And both times I'm like, I just want to play poker. And so I would do that. I would just go heavy into the poker playing of Western Legends. Jazz says, I know you're a fan of Magic the Gathering and was wondering if you've ever played Netrunner or Android Netrunner. I have played Android Netrunner, the LCG. I think I played it once. It's been a long time, but I have played it once. He says he just received the Nisei fan-made system gateway Netrunner card game. Cool. Are you going to talk about it on your channel, Jazz? I'm curious to hear what you think about it after you play that. I love the asymmetry in the game, but it's pretty complex. A lot of keywords in that game trying to figure out how to play. It was a lot to grok in the first play, almost so much that I didn't return to it for a second play. But even Magic, like if I tried to learn Magic now, I don't know how I would possibly learn it. It's so complex. I would probably have to use like Magic Arena to learn how to play it. Gino says, just to share, our local gaming community asked for our all-time favorites this week. Gino had to go with Scythe. While I can list so many reasons why, one thing I find fascinating about the game is that at some point, people take their turns literally standing up all the way until the game ends. Our group loved the Fenris campaign, so many memories. Well, that just makes my day, Gino. That and the Red Rising comment earlier. Thank you so much. That it is really neat when a game just somehow pulls you out of your seat to take those turns that get really tense near the end. And I'll have to, if I ever revisit the world of Scythe, I'll have to try to recapture that in the game design. Jazz says he's looking to check out the system gateway check out the system gateway since I've never played Netrunner, but I've heard the game is incredible. Okay, so you've never played it either, but you're trying to give it a try and see how it plays. Chris says that Doomtown also has poker elements and Tiny Epic Western. Yeah, I haven't played either of those, but I have heard that about both those games. Perry says, am I looking for playtesters? I've been thinking about trying to. I was a competitive card player for years and played games for fun my whole life. Plus, I love designing games, so I think I'd be good at giving great feedback. That might be true, Perry. I've found that sometimes game designers don't actually give the best feedback because they focus on the solutions rather than presenting the why or examples of what happened. Just something to keep in mind if you are doing any playtesting. But if you are interested in being a playtester, I send out a special test every couple years to Stonemaier ambassadors. So the first step is to sign up as a Stonemaier ambassador. It's free. It's on our website. There's an application on our website. And if you're selected, then every couple years you might get a test that can get you up to becoming a playtester, because we're very selective about the playtesters we choose, and we only choose them from ambassadors. Freddie also says that Dark Matter was incredible. Okay, well now I have to read this after Recursion, or after the Adrian Tchaikovsky book that I got, and then I'll read Dark Matter. Chet says, I'll be playing Brass Birmingham tomorrow with my buds. Any tips? I haven't played a lot of Brass. I played it a few times, but I don't think I'm the one to offer tips for it. But maybe some other people can offer tips in the comments. Awesome. Maybe last comment here. Sirkin says, I recently did my first play of Red Rising and ended up with 283 points. That's a great score. I really liked managing my hand of cards in the world of Red Rising. I read the first book. That's awesome. Yeah, I love that you enjoyed the book, and that's a great score. Thank you for giving the game a try. All right, I'm going to head off and make a little bit of lunch right now, but thank you so much for joining me for this chat today. I'll throw it up on YouTube in case you have any other comments or questions after the fact. That's where I'll more easily see comments that happen when they're not live. But have a great Wednesday, a great week, and I'll be back next Wednesday. See you then. Bye.